Welcome to our next highlight here on Formnext Industry Stage in Hall 11D72, and welcome in our live stream on LinkedIn this morning. Yeah, we have the AM panel now, Science and Research as an enabler for industrialization of AM. And for the one or the others, it might be a curious combination, science and research and industrialization on the other hand, and how do they fit together? Normally they are not said in one single sentence, and that's especially why we want to talk about it. And I'm very happy to have selected experts here with me on stage. Andrei Molotnikov, he's Associate Professor and Director of RMIT, the Center for Additive Manufacturing, from our this year's partner country, Australia. It's good to have you here, Andrei.
Thanks so much. Great pleasure.
Alexander Jaschik, he's CEO of ULT Group and new VDMA Vice President in East Germany, right? Or
no, that's for
Germany.
That's for whole Germany, and even better, the VDMA is looking at whole Europe. So we also have European.
Okay, so we come back. We come back to that view. Good to have you here, Alexander. Ingomar Kelbassa, he's Executive Director of Fraunhofer IAPT and is in the Exhibition Advisory Board, right? And former Siemens member, a company member. Did you watch our interview with Peter Kürter?
The last 4 minutes.
The last 4 minutes, so you have to make sure.
But at least I can anticipate what Siemens' perspective is on additive. I'm perfectly sure about that.
I would recommend to zoom in our recording of our session, because everything we do in here will be recorded, and you can watch it on the media library of Formnext later.
Okay.
So if you missed the one yesterday, we had somebody was stuck in a traffic jam, and I said, okay, you have to watch all the live stream at home. Okay, but start into our topic. Ingomar, visitors of IAPT website are greeted with the industrialization of additive slogan. And I was a little bit wow. That's quite a statement. What exactly is your offer to the community?
What is our offer? I mean, we just have 50 minutes, right?
Yeah.
What is our offer? What we have seen is over the past years that AM 3D printing is not just a process step; it's an entire manufacturing chain, from the design, CAD file, to the finished and good. And so our contribution, our solution approach to industrialization is not just having a process-specific look on LPBF, on DED, on binder jetting, whatever the process in additive manufacturing is, but along the entire process chain, also having a significant contribution to mainly post-processing, finish machining, quality assurance, and also with regard to virtualization, automation, and in the end, of course, historically coming from the process.
That's because you wanted to focus, because the first aspects you talked about are very important as well, so you can't let them aside.
Exactly, but if you ask larger companies, end users, what is your biggest obstacle, what's your biggest hurdle in terms of industrialization or line integration into your existing production environment? It is not mainly the productivity of one process step. It's mainly topics such as, hey, why exactly do I need 8 data formats to come from a CAD file to the finished and good? We have found out that 3D printing mainly contributes just to maximum 20% in cost and in time to the entire end-to-end time and cost in terms of additively manufactured parts. But that means in consequence that 80% plus are not generated by the 3D printing process. And that's exactly our philosophy. That's why we say AM is not a process, AM is an entire end-to-end process chain.
And that is the synonym for you for industrialization. Well, if you solve that part.
No, the synonym for industrialization is for us TIL, Technology Readiness Level 9. because you
You
can
have to
have a
describe
look,
that. That was too fast for me.
Yeah, it might be you know these, that I think NASA was generating these TRLs in the 1960s, right? TRL1 is shown feasibility from a basic principle, this process works, and TRL9 is serial implementation into, let's say, shop floors industrialization, pure industrialization. And I mean, Fraunhofer's main mission is to bridge the gap between basic and fundamental research, usually conducted at universities, and bridging the gap into industrialization, industrial environment, usually with end clients and customers that directly pay you via bilateral contract research. And that's exactly the job of Fraunhofer. Fraunhofer does not conduct any kind of basic and fundamental research.
Alexander, how important is an offer IAPT does here from the perspective of the industry?
Actually very important. As you said already, mostly you look only on one specific point, like the laser powder bed fusion machine. But there is a whole process chain between engineering, the pre-processing, the production process itself, and the post-processing. And mostly this part is missing for most of the users. They need to see the complete picture, and that's why it's important to get results on that. What are also on the cost perspective, which is important, CapEx, OpEx. If you look at this, at the whole process chain, and to see also what are already well-known practices. And there, Fraunhofer and also other institutes have to make an important contribution.
Do you know already, are there other companies working together in that aspect with you from the VDMA AM community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was in July where we launched a new association that is called Industrialized Additive Manufacturing Hub Hamburg. And we do meanwhile have 80 companies, so bigger ones, global players, such as Siemens, by the way, such as Siemens Energy, Airbus in Hamburg, etc. But also many SMEs, so small and medium-sized enterprises, cooperating just on the topic on industrialization. And this is exactly the link. I look not just virtually, but also physically into your direction, yes. Andre. The link to Australia, because you are a very big part from RMIT University, is a significant contribution to what you call AMCRC, that stands for Additive Manufacturing Collaborative Research Center. It's the same topic, industrialization of additive manufacturing, not conducted in Germany, not conducted in Hamburg, but exactly the same thing, but in Down Under. And I think the budget is approximately similar to ours, so 100 million plus in Australian dollars, in euros.
Yeah, that would have been my next step to get the broader view into the international market. We come a bit later to that one. I want to keep 1 second in Germany or in Europe. When these companies and the collaboration in Hamburg you're talking about, it's not directly linked to VDMA, right? It's not part of VDMA. The companies are here and there. Both in both associations, but it's not a part of your VDMA activities.
So like I said, the companies which are already engaged also in VDMA are also surely part of this. And just to highlight this, if you look to one of the major topics still is the higher CapEx costs and OpEx costs in comparison to other production principles. And therefore, this cooperation is very important to reduce this and to give an impression also for the users.
I want to understand why is the need of a new cooperation when there is already a VDMA AM community.
Okay.
Where is a additional task, and that would be the next step, asking why do we need some in Australia and some, so why not working together, or what is the specialty, why do you look or what do you focus on that you need an own group in collaboration on this topic, because it should be a VDMA topic as well.
Yeah. If you look like at the typical task of a association like VDMA, there are like political tasks which need to be dealt, like creating standards, bringing the network together, and sometimes it could be better to be more for the practical parts, to have an association like it talked about, where you create like real examples in reality.
It's on a working base.
On a working base. That's a good point. Yeah.
To add on that, VDMA mainly addresses the machine OEMs, right? And of course, in our case, the majority of the 80 companies already collaborating on additive and industrialization on additive is end user focused.
Okay.
But that means the end users do provide the specifications for the next generation for the machine OEMs to exactly fulfill what they want, because these are their clients.
Like
It might be that
it's like
specifically.
you have the lab to the theoretical aspects.
Okay,
So
now
that's-
we want
that's
to
where the
add,
magic
sorry
are
for
happening.
letting you wait so long,
That's
but I
absolutely
wanted to
fine.
understand that point. Now you can add, or I would like you to add your perspective on your working together with companies. Is it exactly the same approach, or wouldn't you agree?
Well, look, Australia is obviously quite far from Europe geographically, but we are very close friends. We're working with Germany and all other European partners all the time. And what excites us about is that we as a community now at that stage where we understand that we've done a lot of exciting research, whether this is developing new machines, new materials, and we want the industry now to take all of these learnings and incorporate them into their products. And the ideas of industry-driven associations is really helping them to do that as fast as possible, focusing on their needs, rather than continuing doing some exciting fundamental research. So we're not stopping that, but we are using this type of new research centers to start helping industry to incorporate all of this funding into final products, right? So as in our case, I can give you examples of large corporations, I don't know, your Boeings and other tier one suppliers, really understanding now the value proposition. And I think that's what we've done well as a community. We worked on that for the last 15 to 20 years. And it's a tipping point where we start now seeing really going from few cases to really starting to incorporate that in a production, right? And Boeing is a fantastic example, and Airbus does exactly the same in Europe, that we see many applications where additive is the right choice. And I think it's important to emphasize that you need to choose the best suitable technology and incorporate that technology into your manufacturing. So we're part of the manufacturing. We need the machines, we need the materials, we need the knowledge of everything that Ingo described, from starting the design to final products. And I think we're finally there where we can make a difference. And we're doing that across different continents, but closely talking and working closely with colleagues both in Europe, in the US, and Canada, and Japan, and so on and so forth. So it's a really exciting time to start taking on those challenges and really doing things that will make a difference.
But how do you manage the competitors in those collaborational work groups? You mentioned
It's actually
Airbus and Boeing, so that's a good example. Can they work closely together, or do you separate it?
I think, again, the industry is opening up, so we do see more sharing between different industries. Of course, it's easier if there's an automotive company and aerospace company in a project where they don't compete directly. However, there's more and more discussions around specific topics within the industry because they're facing the same challenges, right? And we have the privilege of working with all of them to some extent, whether they are your Boeings or Airbuses, and understanding how we can overcome their barriers, right? And our role is, as a university or research organization, to help solve those problems as quickly as possible and find both efficient ways of doing that, but also innovative ways. So a lot of things that we are proposing and doing with partners is starting to look at a lot of processes quite differently, and often come up with hybrid approaches where we're not abandoning the existing knowledge on manufacturing, but we're really saying, okay, well, you can use additive, but maybe we pair it together with a traditional manufacturing, and most people here at the fair understand that additive is a part of the ecosystem. We won't be able to do everything additively, but there's a lot of things that are amazing what we can achieve with additive.
You wanted to add something?
Yeah, just to add also something to the point we said before. If you look at the average machine building company in Germany, Deutscher Mittelstand, it's about like 200 employees. So most of them also, it's also to see that most of them can't afford like a machine immediately, and they don't see the use case. And at this point, it's also important to have locally, like also cooperations between universities, Fraunhofers, and so on, where there can be like joint projects just to identify the use cases. For example, in my personal home region, Upper Lusatia, Saxony, we founded even a local association. We just bought a selective laser melting machine, and now different kind of companies from the region have the possibility to have access to this machine together with the universities. And then it's very fruitful to combine these, the use case together with the technological knowledge. And that's something which Fraunhofers or universities can do locally.
I had a question for you as well, so but you can add your comment.
It's just a comment because you asked. Your question was how does it work? Because you brought up the competitiveness between Boeing and Airbus. It's pretty easy because as long as the topics are pre-competitive, you can collaborate in joint projects because there's no big issue, no big threat jeopardizing your own IP, as long as these are pre-competitive
It's
topics.
similar to standardization processes. There all the competitors
for
work
example,
together
right?
as well.
But when it comes to, let's say, generic topics such as increasing the productivity, hey, so what? I mean, every machine OEM would agree on that, right? Because the customer is interested in that. So pre-competitive topics are not a question. The competitive topics are a question, but these are usually addressing TRLs larger and higher than 7. So usually you can do whatever you want to do in terms of collaboration in pre-competitive topics. And there's a second point on that. That's risk sharing. As long as you do cooperate, you are not taking the risk at your own.
Yeah.
Point 1 and point 2, also risk minimization is public funding, right? So collaboration decreases your risk, and of course public funding financially does decrease your risk.
The Fraunhofer concept, I think, is very much understood here in Germany. Is the structure you were talking about similar to the Fraunhofer concept?
It's not the same concept. So this IMCRC, which is a corporate research center, it's driven by the industry, right? But they do need a research partner. So whether it's a university or a research organization similar to Fraunhofer that we have in Australia, CSRO. So we have to partner up together to solve a particular problem, right? So the model is to some extent partially similar to Fraunhofer, but the end goal is exactly the same. It's about helping to uptake the technology as quickly as possible and find the synergy of different partners working together. And I think what we have happening at the moment in Australia is that we have a lot of industry that identified manufacturing and additive manufacturing as critical. So even going that far as to say that our government put not just the money, but identified that as a critical topic for us for the next 10 to 20 years. And meaning that because of this topic, we need to have the appropriate resources and helping the companies. And the companies span across a lot of industries. So you have your medical, you have your space, you have aerospace, you have a defense and minerals. So all of these areas can greatly benefit from additive manufacturing. And in many cases, I agree with Alexander that some companies are too small to do that themselves. So this kind of network really helps them to be embedded and maybe share the risk, as Ingo says, and share the investment and get faster to the final product. And I think this is what we really need all together.
I don't want to put water in your wine. What joining companies, your associations or your cooperatives, but I do not understand the aspect of it's too small companies and additive is too expensive or too mind blowing to get into the use. You can buy a 3D printer any size, any cost you can afford, and you can start. That is the message I learn here on Formnext. Go into the technology and try it by yourself. You don't need to have something some cooperative. What? It's just try to get me into your boat.
Yeah. We can definitely help you there. So it's partially correct. However, as you heard from Ingo, it's only part of the equation. If you just got the equipment and you got some knowledge from OEMs, it's not sufficient to get to the product. You're still missing out on the design, on the material, on material certification, and all of the other steps before you get to the final product. And even if you printed your product, there's a post-processing, there's other things like non-destructive testing and certification and everything else that still needs to be part of your development. And this is where most of the companies will struggle to cover all of these topics. And it's much better to partner with Fraunhofer or others who've done that on some of the products and can help you to do that faster. Mm-hmm. And that's the same kind of role we take. We help numerous companies, both in Australia or US or somewhere else, to go through that path, often being a silent partner, and you take pride of then seeing those products released by those major companies and them being really successful. And I think that's what also drives us, gets us out of the bed every day, and it's not just the beautiful weather and sunshine in Australia, but also helping the world.
So that is the offer you are doing to the community. What help could you use? Where would you need some support? What just the community joining in, or looking at maybe governmental or restrictions or documentation efforts, or I don't know, regulation could be better or easier, or what do you ask from the government?
It's not really a demand, but if you ask me like that, I would also, what we need is more optimism in these times. And what we definitely need is, let's say, speed. Because we do live, all of us do live in high-wage countries, right? Australia is a high-wage country, Germany is a high-wage country, entire Europe is a high-wage region, as well as North America, Canada and United States. And our contribution to grow that cake of AM, to make it bigger, can just be innovation speed in comparison to all the other regions in the world that are not high-wage countries. And that's exactly what we are asking for, is give us more support financially on the one hand side, but you have, of course, mentioned also in terms of regulation, and what we need is deregulation.
Yeah.
What we definitely need is deregulation, because, you can ask our scientists in our institute, what they need to do in terms of administration is, some say it's fun, but it's not fun, right? If you spend 80% of your workday with just administration things in terms of SAP and all that stuff, then you just spend 20% with the real scientific stuff. So is that a good idea? Usually not. You should definitely make it vice versa.
Just to add this, also the VDMA made a research that for the companies in Germany, there is 3% of the turnover are bureaucracy costs. And that's the lower limit, could be also up to 5%. So this is really something which needs to change. And I hope the debate starts now, and hope we will see it in a new government which come up. Okay. And as well, also one important point, to be honest, is the level playing field. And if you look at the European market and European machine builders, in comparison also to maybe some Chinese or whatever, we need a level playing field concerning the all the regulations and so on. And of course, this is something which government can do. But
That would
honestly,
be addressing the European government.
it is like it is, Föderalismus, the Germans, or the European system. There are European topics, there are German topics, of course. But to be honest, also, the main homework is also on the side of the machine builders or on the process chain. There are a lot of topics still to be solved, and it's also a nice topic because there are a lot of innovation potential still in the thing. And as you ask, maybe you said you received different kind of messages. Of course, we need to differentiate between a simple FDM printer, maybe for 1,000 or 1,500 euro, and between a selective laser melting machine, which is 1 million, 2 million, whatever. So of course there's a wide span of it. And when we're talking about high capex, of course we're talking about this fancy machines, the higher invest volume.
You mentioned that you have a good knowledge about the European market, and you are co-professor in Barcelona, right?
Well, yes, I worked in Barcelona. I grew up in Germany, so I'm also biased because I know the system here. And I work obviously for 20 years in Australia.
So when you compare, especially what we are discussing right now, regulations and the time needed to get to a solution, is it just a self-assessment that we're too slow and that we have too much laws and regulations, or is it?
It depends on the areas again. So I'm also part of Standards Australia, and I can picture or give you a picture of that's quite different. And particularly if you look at our medical devices and you compare the regulations in the US with FDA and in Europe, it's actually much easier here than in Australia. So we are much more stringent when it comes to medical devices and putting implants into people, to that extent that many of our colleagues will choose to collaborate with someone in Europe or in Southeast Asia because we could do those things much faster. So innovations in the medical field are typically go somewhere else and not easily implemented in Australia, whereas in some other industries, we are indeed more inclined to process things faster because our standards body are more lenient, let's say, than some of the European ones, right? But in the same way, we're all part of the global community, so we are working with ISO, we're working with ISTM, and all of those have to work together in order to help companies, because most of the companies, again, are across different continents, right? And they need to adjust to all of these standards, and standards are good to some extent because they help the industry to really go away from prototyping to real products.
To lean on to
I think
basis, like a basis.
Yes,
to
and
work.
we're all doing our part of that equation, that we're contributing to writing those standards, and we meet in the US and everywhere else, and we're discussing what's important, and there's always a conflict between, let's say, academics versus companies versus providers, and we all find different things important. So it's a finding that fine balance that does not restrict every party too much, but makes things safer in most cases.
Because I have you here on stage, I want to collect your view on the markets. We prepared a graph, and I do not have a clicker to show the graph. Maybe the colleagues can behind that you see the same numbers than I see, but maybe it doesn't work. I don't know. I tell you the numbers. So we have some figures here from the WOLAS report, and brought to us by Terry
Yes.
kindly, so that I can display them. And so there is a revenue share of the AM sector within 20 billion euros in 2023, and we see 14%. Automotive, consumer products, medical and dental, and aerospace with 13%. So they are just ahead, and others with 14. And then we have a gap. Then academic government military with 10%, and power energy with 6%, and construction with 4%. Does this picture fits to your assessment of the market?
I think that's a very good representation. I mean, we all know Terry and how the way the data is collected. And I think my main takeaway messages sort of from the last few years is that we all manage now to crawl quite well. We're starting walking a bit faster when it comes to the AM industry, but we are still not running. And the next 5 to 10 years, it's exactly the time where the concepts like the one in Hamburg or in Australia, they are the concepts that should help us to go from running, and meaning that you have maybe less critical parts that are producing, to start producing parts that will accelerate the adaptation and industrialization of IM.
What's your assessment?
Also, I think that sounds pretty reasonable, what I heard. And the message behind could be, as always, the more complex and the part is, and the lower the numbers produced, the more AM is used. And if you look like at defense, for example, or aviation, something, this is where like AM has really its advantages. And when
you expect growing rates here, because that would be my follow-up question.
And in these branches, yeah. Mm-hmm. For the other segments like automotive, I think there's still a way to go. Especially if it comes to the, now can see it, to the mass market. I was impressed when I started 10 years ago working at the VDMA, or starting be involved in the VDMA, Additive Manufacturing, and there was an automotive company presenting cost per part for a molded part and cost per part printed, and it was factor 100. So at this point I realized, oh, there is still a long, long way to go. But it's worth doing it. So, just to summarize, it sounds very reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. What's your opinion?
I don't care, because the perspective of countries is absolutely different. Because in Australia, the majority of GDP comes out of mining. So, digging something out of the ground, selling it to somewhere else, to China, to the US, to Europe, and purchasing back all these different goods that were manufactured in China, in the US, etc.
That was exactly
that means their approach to additive is just another approach than us in Germany, because we have a high rate of manufacturing already and production in Germany. So in terms of Australia, they have a higher lever in terms of increasing the value add in Australia, instead of selling something that was digged out of the ground, selling the end part, right? So their perspective on additive is just another one than ours. So I don't care too much about different industries. It might be right, it might be wrong, I don't know. But in the end, industrialization means that it doesn't matter for what kind of for what kind of fields of application we do it. Just giving one example, and these kind of success stories we need to write jointly. If you have in mind, everybody is talking about photovoltaics, is talking about wind energy, etc. Also in terms of circular economy, also in terms of hydrogen. You can generate hydrogen via wind power, or might be via photovoltaics, whatever, green, blue hydrogen. Then you have hydrogen. In case of electricity, you can re-electrify hydrogen via a gas turbine. Problem is, hydrogen burns with 200 Kelvin higher temperatures in comparison to natural gas. So what you need to do is a redesign, a re-engineering of the entire so-called hot gas path. Burning chamber, the two first stages of the high pressure turbine. That is already done, but the problem is, if you fire a gas turbine as it is right now, doesn't matter from whom, you will be just remelting the gas turbine, because you are burning things with 200 Kelvin higher temperatures. So the manufacturing path of coming to these physical components, let's call it manufacture or production, is not possible via a cast route as of today. It is just possible with using 3D printing and additive manufacturing. So that means equals additive manufacturing is the key enabler for an H2, a hydrogen-ready gas turbine for the future. And these success stories we need to write jointly.
And just to underline, that's very good. And that's also the point where the cooperation between science and research and machine builders comes together to give like inspiration what could be possible. And there are still a lot of things to be identified. And if we humans always, if we look to the future, we look in the mirror backwards and think we can scale like the history to the future. But if you look like this, these are completely new ways of dealing with it. So,
but the reason I showed you the numbers,
we need this role model
we're exactly not looking behind, but looking forward, and that was exactly why I asked you that, because when I know that I have a differentiated look in the different markets, then I have different chances and I have different tasks I have to fulfill. So when you say there is a very much more mature market in Australia and you have a good knowledge of the Australian market.
I didn't say maturity. No. I did say different. Larger chances and opportunities in terms of the GDP.
Yeah. Okay, but that is a message for our audience, I think, that you have to look behind these numbers. First question for me is, where can I expect the most growth? Where are we lacking behind? So where could we focus? Because there is much more possibilities for the future, for small startups or small companies. Where could I find some grains I can work on? And on the other hand, I can have as company I can look at the chances when there is a very a market chance in Australia, then I can focus on these aspects. Okay, and you already said medical is a bit more complicated in
well, medical is complicated,
Australia.
But it's actually the prime example where IM is successful, because if you go and you look at all of the manufacturers of medical devices, particularly orthopedic implants, without naming the four main companies, all of them are now using IM. Yeah. And in fact, the biggest users of IM in an industrial setting are medical companies.
And I want to add another example from the defense. We already this morning talked about defense, and there was not a common opinion here which one will be growing faster. I heard about the submarine project that somebody saw it on the news probably, that went from France to the consortium of US and UK.
Yes.
And so the Australian don't visit France anymore. So
that's not true. We still like the French, and this is political discussions or decisions.
Yeah. But I want to zoom in the chance that lies in here, because what I heard is that that the project in building these submarines is only possible using AM because of the scaling up process. You just cannot achieve as aim. Did you hear from that project? And is it true in your opinion?
We're working very closely with Australian Submarine Agency, so that's absolutely true. So we will be building nuclear submarines in Australia. The initial ones will be built between UK, US, and us. But we're setting up this manufacturing, and again, this is a fantastic opportunity for additive, because you don't need to build 1,000 submarines. So you're building 10, they're obviously very expensive, but you're also building the whole supply chain around it, because it's actually quite a complex undertaking. There's lots of moving parts and a lot of different industries required, both in country and outside, that need to supply that. So in many cases, additive is the logical pathway, and that's also dictated by our partners in the US and the UK, who identify that as a critical industry that will help us to do that.
That was the reason I wanted to zoom in the different sectors, because when I hear as a company here exhibiting or visiting Formnext, and I hear from these projects, and you gave a very nice project with a hydrogen
Gas turbine, yeah.
burning gas turbine. Thank you. So that then I see chances in focusing on these industry sectors. Is it from the VDMA perspective a topic to make to publish and to make more clearer where the different now our audience here in the hall can see the numbers we are talking about. Thank you very much to the techniques. The sectors. So, should we publish the information, or should we bring together the information about what's going on, where are the chances, and wouldn't be VDMA a good platform for this?
Definitely, it's not. Would it be? It is already a platform. So, if you go to the VDMA section, there are a lot of models displayed where you can see or get already inspiration what's possible. And I think this is also one major topic which VDMA can do, and as well as research or other companies, to present like good examples, to give the inspiration. Because, as you all know, if you are an engineer, you need also another way of thinking if it comes to additive, how you engineer something, the concept behind. And therefore you need some inspiration. And therefore it's a good idea to have a look at it.
In 10 years.
And also just wanted to add something also, things which you haven't seen before could be possible, but also AM is, from my perspective, also a contributor to sustainability. There are also very good examples where you can go in with reduced material effort and thereby less energy effort, and make a contribution also to the sustainability aspect. And there's also still a lot of good things to come on this point.
So let's switch to another topic. Thank you very much for the graph. I want to look in the remaining minutes. I want to look at which country will be growing fastest. Which country will be ahead in 10 years from now on. So everybody's talking about China, you know, they are moving in very fast. You see lots, each year you see lots more of products and visitors and solutions. US is stating they have a program, and with Trump elected, there could be much more money into the US business. Europe is shaking their heads and looking around, and what could we do? And Australia has big projects with in defense. So which region or country will be ahead in 10 years?
That's a high political question you ask.
So we have a high political panel here on stage.
Because actually there are also aspects which we can't foresee, like political aspects. At the moment we are living in a world of decoupling, where I say like there are America, the United States are separating somehow. Europe needs to be stand together, form a more Europe. China is going in competition, and a lot of things are changing. Honestly, I don't really want to answer the question directly, but I hope that it will lead, the competition will lead to better applications for the AM industry, and competition has been always a driver for innovation. So I hope for competition, and I hope, of course, I'm a European, I hope we will make it, but there are so many aspects to be considered.
I should shrink the time from 10 years or widen the time. Ingo.
Yeah, I mean, what I said, we need more optimism, right? So I would be the last one not saying that it will be us, right? But of course, that necessitates a paradigm shift in thinking. Because at the moment, everything is bad. We are so pessimistic across all the different industries, right? Doesn't matter. I mean, starting with automotive in Germany, right? That's perfectly clear. But it will be us if we take things seriously. But of course, yes, this is a time of challenges. But again, challenges always equal opportunities, and we need to take these opportunities seriously. And if we do that, and I'm pretty optimistic that we can do it, it will be us and not another region.
So
might be to be very politically correctly. Of course, Australia. I include Australia.
So Europe and Australia as combination, very friendly
Good on
for
you.
the representative of the partner country. What is your opinion?
Look. My take is to try to help the whole world. I mean, it's probably very optimistic, but I think that I'm looking at IM as a large community that does work together in many cases, and I don't think we need to be fighting over small part of the pie. So the pie is big enough, and it's about us together making that progress that will increase the pie, and then the share of it will increase for everyone. And I think it's making the right decision. So I'm glad to see programs in Hamburg, for instance, now initiating and growing, because this is the programs we need to fund in order to help everyone to see the value proposition. And I suppose that will also have the political influence to make sure that that goes beyond the Hamburg region or beyond Germany and pulls a lot of other European partners in. And as Australia, we are always considered as a very friendly, because we are, and we
For sure.
we like
Everybody knows.
we like working with everyone and are usually very accommodating. I mean, most people think that it's quite far to fly to Australia, but you will be surprised how easy it is nowadays to get there. Particularly when you talk to the generation that took a boat and it was 3 months. Right nowadays, sometimes if you're unlucky, you might be taking the train from Hamburg to Formnext. It will take you as long as getting to Australia. So a lot of people yesterday were stuck in the train, and I'm sorry for picking on Deutsche Bahn, but
so friendly Australians are. I don't
Everybody
know,
doing.
So it's
But you're right. You're right.
definitely worthwhile to come and visit us and see the opportunities. And in fact, many European companies are coming to Australia because we have quite a high possibilities in terms of
But coming back to
incorporating
my
innovation.
question, the answer would be the world. The world would be compete against Mars. So we would be better than in 10 years. AM on the world is
Maybe
better
the
than
world
AM
will
on Mars.
compete
Okay.
against Elon Musk, but that's probably, let's not go there.
Very philosophy answer. Yeah, time is running fast. I want to know where so you in the beginning of our talks we had a clear offer of especially from you both that visitors and companies, small companies, can make contact to you and get into projects. So I want to know, where can I meet you? Are you here on the exhibition? Where can I find you? Do you have a booth?
So we are in Hall 12. Australia is very lucky in that sense that particularly the local government from Victoria is sponsoring the stand, and we're lucky to be the partner country for this year. So we are very grateful for that support. So please come to Hall 12, find the beautiful booth with Global Victoria, and you will find lots of companies from Australia representing our technological advances, and we're happy to chat to you there.
With friendly people, but unfriendly
people
kangaroos.
and you can get a free kangaroo sticker as well if you come to our stand.
Ingomar, where can I find you when I want to join your Hamburg association or collaboration?
Yeah, we are located here at Formnext in Hall 12.0, so ground floor, booth C89.
And open for, as I said, for everybody.
We are completely closed. We do not want to cooperate.
Okay, yeah, that's a statement.
Yeah, of course. Of course, you're welcome.
We can transmit that to the audience. Yeah, and VDMA has a partner booth you already mentioned.
Yeah, also at 12.
Okay.
So if you're already on the
that's an easy way for the
you're
audience.
welcome.
You know, with
and
one way
also
you
my
can
company is also on 12.
and your company as well. I missed the time.
It's worth going to 12.
Asking you about what your company does contribute, but the time is, if you have
50 seconds. Yeah, it's like an elevator pitch. We are doing gas cleaning systems for the additive industry. For example, like the selective laser melting process, we're cleaning the argon and nitrogen.
One of these
since
steps,
25 years.
One of these steps we need in the process to make the entire process faster and healthier and cheaper.
More productive, especially.
More productive. Okay, thank you very much for being with me here on stage, for sharing your insights. Dear audience, now we are at the end of our panel session and we are going into our lunch break. But make sure to be with us again at, let me have a look, at 2:15. We will continue our program here on Industry Stage and live Formnext TV. See you then.